A blatantly racist police officer brazenly stops a black woman's car and conducts an unwarranted search, driven solely by his prejudices. But when her true identity is revealed, the officer is left stunned, unable to believe his own eyes. This twist will leave you on the edge of your seat. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more dramatic and unexpected moments in upcoming videos. Maya Johnson is one of the highest-ranking officers in the city's police department. Her name is widely recognized within the community, not only for her exceptional performance but also for her strong leadership and admirable qualities. Early in her career, when Maya was still a rookie, a colleague deliberately underestimated her. However, her persistence and determination helped her rise above it. She often reminds herself that every challenge is an opportunity to prove her worth. She is one of the few black women to achieve the rank of captain in the police force, a feat far from easy in a profession predominantly dominated by men. For Maya, every step in her career has been a grueling battle, but she has always remained steadfast, not only for herself, but also for the values of justice she upholds. Maya is not one to flaunt her authority. Although she could easily use her rank and power to exert influence, she chooses to maintain a humble and approachable demeanor with the community. She never distances herself or acts arrogantly. Instead, she prioritizes building strong relationships with the people she serves. To Maya, every interaction with the community is an opportunity to show care and to listen, whether in her role as a police officer or just as an ordinary person. Yet, beneath her gentle exterior lies a steely resolve and unwavering determination. Throughout her career, Maya has faced numerous challenges. As a black woman in law enforcement, she often had to work twice as hard as her male colleagues to prove her abilities and worthiness for her position. At times, her superiors viewed her as an outsider in this profession, especially when she displayed her steadfast commitment to justice and the rights of the oppressed. She often had to contend with skepticism and racist attitudes from her colleagues, people who believed that a black woman could never rise to the top in a field dominated by men and white individuals. However, Maya has never backed down. She has proven that her competence and determination can overcome any obstacle. Step by step, she has climbed the ranks, breaking barriers of gender and race, becoming a role model for those pursuing justice, especially women and members of the black community. But Maya's success is not just a result of her professional expertise. It stems from her relentless perseverance and unyielding determination, despite the hardships she has faced. As a captain, Maya is deeply respected by her colleagues and subordinates. Yet, she is always mindful of the heavy responsibility she bears. Justice is not just a theory to her. It's a challenging path, a mission she must fulfill no matter the personal cost. To many, Maya is not just an excellent police officer. She is a symbol of strength, a figure of resilience in the face of injustice, and a tireless fighter for what is right. Maya's story is not just about professional accomplishments, but also about rising above societal barriers and fighting for justice in a world that is rarely fair to people like her. It is a journey filled with struggles that she continues every day, striving for a better future for everyone, no matter who they are. While Maya Johnson continues her resilient journey, another story, dark and full of disillusionment, is being written by her colleague, Officer Jake Carter. Jake Carter is a young police officer around 30 years old, but he already feels like he's being left behind in the police force. Carter often recalls the words his father once told him, "Never trust people of color. They're always the problem." These outdated prejudices, though old-fashioned, have shaped how Carter views the world, especially when it comes to poorer neighborhoods. Carter's career has not progressed the way he had envisioned when he first joined the force. It's been almost 10 years since he became a police officer, yet there hasn't been any significant promotion. On the contrary, everything seems to be slipping out of his grasp. His marriage is also on shaky ground, with him and his wife standing on the brink of separation. Frustrated with his job and disappointed with his life, Carter has become a man trapped in a web of despair and unspoken sadness. From a young age, Carter grew up in a household where his father, also a police officer, frequently told stories steeped in prejudice about poor neighborhoods and people of color. These views went unquestioned by Carter and gradually solidified into beliefs. Coupled with the pressures of his job, personal failures, and the feeling of being unacknowledged in his career, Carter began to see the world through a negative lens, blaming those around him with ease. In particular, he became consumed by harmful stereotypes, which led him to believe he had the right to take control and set things right. In recent months, Carter's frustrations had intensified as he felt increasingly undervalued. No matter how hard he worked, it seemed to yield no results. Other colleagues were getting promoted and assigned important tasks, while Carter was left, with late-night shifts and tedious hours in run-down neighborhoods. This left him feeling more resentful and disheartened about himself. Amid his professional failures, Carter found solace in clinging to the negative views he had long harbored about marginalized communities. In his mind, poor neighborhoods, especially those with black communities, were always havens for crime, chaos, and everything he despised but couldn't escape. Though unspoken, Carter had gradually formed a deeply ingrained negative image of the people living there, particularly black women. That night, as Carter patrolled the suburban area, he happened to spot a car parked at a small gas station, a location notorious for incidents of theft and violence. He saw a woman standing near the car, pumping gas. In the dim light, Carter couldn't immediately identify her, but he quickly sensed something off. A black woman in a police uniform, standing in an area like this so late at night? It didn't fit with what he knew, with what he believed. Unbidden thoughts began to flood Carter's mind. He had heard stories of black officers, especially women, being overlooked, dismissed, and deemed unfit for the job. Without fully realizing it, he began to feel uneasy seeing a black woman in a police role, standing in such a place. He felt the need to check on her, as if to assert his authority. This wasn't just a routine check anymore. For Carter, it was an opportunity to prove himself. He needed to show that he still had value within the police force, that he could do what others wouldn't, and that he could command respect. Unaware that the woman he was about to confront was one of the city's highest-ranking officers, Carter decided he would stop her for a check. It was an opportunity to reassert his power on a cold, uneventful night, a night where everything else seemed to drift by in meaningless monotony. Driving toward the gas station, Carter carefully watched the woman's every move, his mind growing more tense. As Maya's car came to a halt and she began to pump gas, Carter couldn't resist the urge to act. He saw this as his chance to reclaim the sense of control he had lost over the years. Without even identifying who she was, he immediately began formulating reasons to stop and question her, despite having no legitimate justification. In Carter's mind, this was his moment to take charge, to make the woman obey, to prove that he could still control any situation, regardless of who she was. Narrowing his eyes and gripping the steering wheel tightly, he made his decision without hesitation. This was his chance to make a statement. And so, an encounter no one wanted began to take shape, driven by prejudice and frustration. Meanwhile, Maya, unaware of what was about to unfold, was preparing to face a challenge far greater than anything she had experienced before. She had no idea that behind Carter's gaze was a brewing hostility, not just toward her, but toward the very values she had fought so hard to uphold throughout her career. Maya, after a stressful week at work, decided to stop at a gas station to fill up before heading home. This was an area she had patrolled before, so she had no suspicions. As she was pumping gas, the flashing lights from a patrol car behind her made her pause. An officer stepped out with an unfriendly demeanor. As Maya's car passed a small gas station on the outskirts of the city, she noticed her gas tank was nearly empty. This was an area she had patrolled many times, so, although it wasn't the safest place, she felt relatively comfortable being there. She knew every nook and cranny of the area, the quiet streets and small shops that had become familiar. Moreover, she was still in her police uniform, and her presence usually helped mitigate potential dangers. She pulled into the gas station without any suspicion that something unusual would happen that night. While Maya stood near her car, filling up the tank and preparing for a short trip home, a patrol car turned into the gas station from behind. The flashing lights of the police car reflected in her rearview mirror. Maya sighed, recognizing the presence of a colleague, but she didn't think it would be a tense situation. However, an uneasy feeling began to creep in. When the patrol car stopped, Maya felt something was off. A young officer with a suspicious look approached her. "Do you have a reason to be here at this hour?" he asked coldly. "Just filling up my tank, officer," Maya replied, keeping her voice calm. Officer Jake Carter stepped out of his vehicle, appearing unhurried, but every movement he made was deliberate and calculated. His arms were crossed over his chest and his face showed clear skepticism, as if he were searching for a reason to decide for her. Carter's strides were not casual. They were those of someone seeking validation from a world he felt alienated from. He carried with him a sense of failure from years of stagnation in his career, feeling looked down upon by colleagues and inadequate to stand out. Overpowering others was the only way Carter could regain the sense of control that he had lost. He didn't realize that these feelings had made him rigid and conservative. He always wanted to prove that he still had value within the police force, but his insecurities clung to him. Maya sensed an ambiguous tension in the air. She didn't recognize him immediately, but his gaze, scanning her from head to toe, demanded her attention. Maya was not new to law enforcement. She had faced situations like this many times before, but this time something felt off. The suspicion in his eyes was not merely a routine check, it was an underlying hostility. "Good evening," Carter spoke up, his tone icy and lacking any intention of being friendly. He looked at Maya, trying to assess her silently before speaking arrogantly. "Do you have a reason to be here at this hour?" Maya did not respond immediately. She recognized right away that this was not a normal traffic stop. The suspicion in his eyes targeted not only her presence, but also her skin color, something Maya had faced throughout her career. Nevertheless, she remained calm, took a gentle breath, and smiled. "Just filling up my tank. Nothing unusual, officer," Maya replied, maintaining her composure while internally preparing for any situation that might arise. Carter did not respond right away. Instead, his gaze grew colder. He failed to recognize that the woman before him was not just an ordinary police officer. Maya could feel his impatience. It seemed as though he was looking for a reason to check her credentials and validate his suspicions. "This area almost always has crime, especially at night," Carter continued, intentionally diminishing her presence by referring to the area as a crime-ridden zone. "You're surely not one of them, are you?" Maya was not surprised. She had heard such remarks many times from those who held prejudiced views about places like this. But this did not weaken her resolve. She took a deep breath and remained composed. After all, she was still an officer, and her authority was not something Carter could easily challenge. "Nothing to worry about here, officer," Maya said, her tone slightly colder but still controlled. "I'm just filling up my tank." Carter, dissatisfied with her response, took another step forward, exaggerating his authority by touching the gun on his belt, despite having no reason to do so. Maya felt the tension from this action and knew that this was not a situation she could let escalate further. She had long been prepared to deal with such discomforts. However, the unexpectedness still unsettled her. This confrontation had yet to reveal its true nature, but Maya already sensed that this encounter would be more complicated than others she had experienced before. Carter had placed himself in a world he did not understand, while Maya stood ready to face any challenges that might come her way. Carter stepped closer, lightly touching the gun at his hip. "Do you live around here?" he asked, his voice icy. "This area has a lot of crime, especially at night." "I know this area well," Maya replied calmly. "I've patrolled here many times." "Do you have any identification?" Carter asked, his tone strange as if he were commanding rather than inquiring. Maya stood tall, not rushing, but inside she recalled the times she had been stopped simply because of her skin color. The feeling of being looked down upon made her acutely aware of the injustices she faced today. She sensed an undercurrent rising in her mind, but she was too accustomed to similar situations. Standing firm against suspicion, she refused to let her emotions take control. Too many times in her career, she had to prove that she had the right to be here, and this time was no different. "I'm just filling up my tank, officer. There's nothing to worry about," Maya replied, her voice steady and devoid of panic. But Carter had no intention of stopping there. His gaze sharpened, challenging her calmness. Although she was not a stranger to law enforcement, to him, Maya was just an outsider in a dangerous area that he deemed appropriate to investigate. "Do you live around here?" Carter asked again, his words dripping with judgment. It was as if he had already decided that Maya did not belong here. "Are you aware that this area has a lot of crime?" Maya felt a wave of anger rising in her chest. She could easily recognize the blatant racism in Carter's question, the prejudices deeply ingrained in his mind. His description of the area as a place inhabited only by black criminals made Maya feel not only disrespected but also belittled. Carter's questions were not born from curiosity but were an imposition, an attempt to assert his power over a black woman who he believed did not belong. "Yes," Maya replied, maintaining an even tone while a storm brewed inside her. "I know this area very well, and I've patrolled here many times." But Carter wouldn't relent. His gaze remained fixed on her, and his bullying demeanor became increasingly apparent. He did not believe Maya's words. There was no respect in how he looked at her. Each of his questions felt like a trap, waiting for an angry reaction or at least a sign of weakness from her. "So, who do you think you are?" Carter asked, his voice rising. "You think you can fill up your tank and leave without consequences? The police aren't here to play games." Maya felt great frustration swell within her. This was not the first time she faced people who regarded her as undeserving, solely because of her skin color and gender. But today's challenge was too blatant, too direct. Maya was not someone who feared confrontation. However, she knew that in this situation, losing her composure could lead her into the trap that Carter was trying to set. "Thank you for your concern, officer, but I don't need to prove who I am to you," Maya said, her words gentle yet firm. "If you don't have a specific reason to stop me, I will continue with my business." Carter blinked as if Maya's words challenged him, but that challenge only fueled his stubbornness. He became more convinced of his own superiority. All along, Carter believed that areas like this belonged to people he never had to respect. People unlike him who could never stand on equal footing with him. "Get out of the car," Carter ordered, his voice laced with threat. Maya did not hesitate. She had been in this job long enough to know that sometimes when facing people like Carter, only calmness could control the situation. She opened the car door, stepped out, and stood tall without lowering her head. She had faced worse situations than this before and would not allow herself to become a victim of discrimination or prejudice. But the tension was far from over. Carter began walking around the car, his eyes still fixed on Maya, as if he were searching for reasons to conclude that she was at fault. Each step he took affirmed his disbelief in her, and this only made Maya feel more uncomfortable than ever. She knew that the suspicion in his eyes was not merely because she could be a criminal, but because she was a black woman entitled to stand on equal ground with him, something he was not ready to accept. Maya maintained her composure. She was not weak, and no matter how much Carter pursued her, she would not be subdued. She had stood firm against many challenges in life, and today would be no different. Maya stood her ground, her patience beginning to fracture as Carter refused to relent. He touched the trunk of her car, but a voice rang out from behind. "What are you doing?" It was Mark Wilson, a longtime colleague of Maya's. Mark's presence immediately changed the atmosphere. "Carter, stop. This is Captain Maya Johnson, and you're overstepping your bounds." Mark's strong words made Carter freeze, his hands trembling as they halted mid-motion. Maya could feel the oppression in every question he posed, and his gaze remained unchanged, still filled with suspicion and criticism. Although she had explained that she was merely filling up her tank and had done nothing wrong, Carter continued to press on. He even demanded to see her identification without any clear reason. For Carter, checking Maya was not just a duty, it was a way for him to assert power and vent frustrations he didn't know how to handle. Having witnessed his father use authority to control those he deemed inferior, Carter unconsciously replicated that behavior. He believed his suspicions were justified, making it easy for him to blame others rather than confront his shortcomings. Maya took a deep breath, trying to maintain her composure. "I've already told you, officer, I'm just filling up my tank. There's nothing worth checking." But Carter wasn't listening. His eyes glinted with a determination Maya had never seen in a police officer before. This persistence did not stem from professional duty. It was the resolve of someone unwilling to accept injustice, or at least someone unwilling to accept that a person like Maya could stand on equal footing with him. Carter was not just acting with the demeanor of an officer. He was fueled by resentment and contempt that Maya could feel in every word he spoke. "Your papers," Carter commanded, his tone still oppressive. Maya once again pulled out her wallet and handed him her identification, but instead of quickly checking it and letting her go, Carter lingered too long. He didn't stop there. He began searching around the car. A surge of anger rose within Maya, but she remained calm. She had seen officers like Carter before, those who abused their power to search, control, and intimidate others without any valid reason. Carter continued to circle the vehicle, scrutinizing everything. Each step he took felt like a challenge that Maya had to confront, but she stood there silently, gripping the documents tightly in her hand. "So, what do you think will happen if I find something in your car?" Carter asked mockingly. Maya didn't respond. She simply looked at him. Everything could end quickly if Carter would just stop, but he didn't want that. He wanted to prove himself right. He wanted to create a reason to control her even when there was no valid justification. The tension spread. Not only was this an issue of discrimination, but also a confrontation between two people. one trying to maintain power and the other fighting for fairness. Carter stopped in front of Maya's trunk. He opened the lid without permission, his gaze judgmental. Maya felt the blatant disrespect in that action, as if he were entitled to rummage through her belongings without any justification. Maya remained silent, keeping her eyes on Carter and not missing any of his gestures. Just a few more seconds, and she knew everything could change. He pulled out a small bag from the corner of the trunk, a first aid kit that Maya always kept in her car as part of being prepared for her job. "A first aid kit?" Carter asked with suspicion in his voice. He shook his head as if he had just uncovered something dubious. "Are you hiding something in here?" Maya felt the sarcasm in Carter's question. She had enough experience in the field to know that he wasn't seeking the truth. He was merely looking for ways to complicate matters further. The first aid kit contained only essential items like bandages, ointments, and pain relievers, things anyone with a preparedness mindset would carry. But Carter had no intention of acknowledging that reality. Instead, he continued to pry open the bag, dumping everything out as if hoping to find something darker. Maya felt her patience shattering inside her. She had fought hard to prove that she deserved her current position, and now she was facing blatant discrimination right within her job. She had never hesitated to confront biases and racism within law enforcement before, but this time felt different. "I've already said it, officer. It's just a first aid kit. There's nothing wrong," Maya said, her voice starting to tighten. Carter didn't respond, but continued rummaging through the contents nonchalantly as if he hadn't heard her at all. He scoffed while tossing items aside and continued mockingly, "I bet you don't want me to check more thoroughly." Maya's patience was wearing thin. She could sense the disrespect in every word from Carter, and each action of his further confirmed one thing. He wasn't just searching her car, he was violating her dignity and authority. This wasn't just a routine check. This was a confrontation with racism that she had battled throughout her career. And this time, she would not let that discrimination defeat her. The confrontation between Maya and Carter was reaching a boiling point. Carter continued to search Maya's car while she, despite her utmost patience, began to feel the blatant injustice of his actions. With each passing moment, the tension in the air thickened. Maya knew she could not allow herself to be subdued, but the racism she was facing made everything increasingly exhausting. As Carter began to turn and approach her again, seemingly looking for more reasons to overpower her, a small noise from outside caught both of their attention. Maya quickly turned her head. A resident, appearing to be an old friend or at least an acquaintance, stood not far away. She recognized that face immediately. It was Tom, a longtime friend of Maya's. Although not a colleague in law enforcement, Tom was someone who frequently encountered Maya during past patrols, and now he stood there with his phone in hand, recording the unfolding scene. Tom held his phone up, capturing the entire incident. He was not merely filming. He aimed to clarify Carter's actions before the community. "Maya, are you okay?" Tom asked, moving closer with a serious look directed at Carter. "I'll send this to the relevant parties if necessary." Tom's intervention caused Carter to pause. He hadn't expected to be under surveillance, which significantly diminished his initial bravado. Tom not only proved that Maya was not alone, but also helped her regain control of the tense situation. His role, though small, created an important turning point. Maya sighed, realizing that this was no longer just a confrontation between her and Carter. Part of her felt relieved to have someone witnessing the event, but another part felt anxious. Tom, although an old friend, might not directly intervene in this situation. Moreover, having someone recording could also be a double-edged sword in this high-pressure work environment. Everyone knew that when a police officer was filmed, It could have significant repercussions on their career. Carter seemed to notice Maya's gaze lingering on Tom. He turned and saw the man standing there with his phone. Carter's expression changed instantly. He began to feel anxious. While he could not deny that he still maintained an overpowering stance in his confrontation with Maya, one undeniable fact loomed. If this video spread, it would serve as a clear evidence of his misconduct. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Carter," Maya said coldly, keeping her eyes fixed on him. "That guy is recording. If you don't want this to become a big issue, you should stop now." For a moment, Carter's gaze revealed confusion. He paused, took a deep breath, and then looked at Tom with a serious and somewhat irritated expression. He did not want to be seen as the wrongdoer in this situation. However, his pride and arrogance as a police officer seemed to prevent him from backing down. Carter knew that if he retreated immediately, it would appear as though he was admitting fault, a concession he could not afford. Maya looked at him with unwavering eyes. She understood that without someone else intervening, this confrontation might not end as she hoped. But there was nothing more she could do except stand firm and maintain her composure. "Carter," Maya continued with a strong and resolute voice, "you have no reason to continue searching me. I'm a police officer. I haven't done anything wrong. If you want to cause more trouble, I won't hesitate to report your behavior." Meanwhile, in the darkness of late night, Mark Wilson, a longtime police colleague of Maya, stood in the shadows observing the situation from afar. He had been watching from a distance and recognized the abnormality and oppression that Carter was inflicting on Maya. Mark knew that Carter had crossed a line and that there was no longer any justification for continuing this search. However, a significant sense of hesitation grew within him. Although he was an officer himself, Mark clearly understood that if he intervened in this matter, he would face considerable trouble in his work environment, especially since Carter held influence within the department. He stood there, just meters away from the confrontation, gripping his phone tightly in his pocket. Part of him wanted to step forward and stand by Maya's side against Carter, yet fear for his career and potential consequences made him hesitate. He knew that if he did nothing, his silence would be seen as complicity with Carter's wrongful actions. Ultimately, in the prolonged moment of silence, Mark sighed and stepped back into the shadows. He decided not to intervene immediately. Instead, he would have to find another way to address this situation internally later on. But, for now, he felt utterly powerless. Carter could no longer endure the stress of being recorded and the feeling of being watched. Once again, he glanced at Tom before looking back at Maya with a changed expression. He realized he could not continue acting like this for much longer, but did not want to admit fault. Maya recognized this shift. She understood that having external witnesses was an advantage, but also knew that Carter's actions would not change simply because he feared exposure. All she could do was hold her ground and hope that one day justice would prevail for those who fought like her. Maya took a deep breath, maintaining her calm gaze. "I am Captain Maya Johnson," she said, her voice strong. She pulled out her phone and immediately called her superior. "Sir, I am being unlawfully searched by Officer Carter. I request that you verify this situation immediately." The voice on the other end came through clearly. "I will handle it right away." Those words hit Carter like a punch, making it impossible for him to continue his actions. Carter paused, clearly surprised, but instead of backing down, he sneered. "So what? You think your rank will protect you?" "No," Maya replied, stepping forward. "But it's enough to report you to your superiors. So what else do you want?" Maya didn't stop there. She took her phone from her pocket and called the superior of both officers. "Sir, she said, keeping her eyes on Carter. "I am being unlawfully searched by one of the officers, Officer Carter, without just cause. I need you to confirm this on sight." Carter paled as he overheard the call. He tried to speak in defense, but Maya cut him off with a cold glare. "Carter, if you continue to act improperly, I will not only report you but will also file a formal complaint right here." Maya's decisive actions stripped Carter of his initial confidence. He was forced to stand still, unable to utter another word as his superior responded over the phone that they would investigate immediately. Her voice, though calm, carried an undeniable authority. This assertion was a small shock to Carter. He stood frozen for a moment, surprise flashing in his eyes as he realized she was not an ordinary citizen as he had presumed. However, instead of retreating, he remained silent for a few seconds, a mocking smile appearing on his lips. Carter did not acknowledge his mistake. He merely looked at her with disdain. "Oh, really?" Carter smirked, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "You think you won't be treated like everyone else? You think you have some sort of privilege just because of your title?" Carter's words felt like a slap in Maya's face. Not only did he show no remorse, but he also continued to assert his contempt for her. Maya could sense the mockery in his gaze as if he were waiting to see how she would react. He wanted her to bow down, or at least show some hesitation, but she would never do that. Maya stood firm, her eyes betraying no fear. She understood that people like Carter could only be defeated when they faced themselves and recognized that true power did not lie in deceitful words or oppression. With determination and authority in every gesture, Maya looked directly into Carter's eyes once more. "What can you do to me, Carter?" Maya asked, her tone unwavering and sharp. "No matter how much you want to exert power or oppress anyone, that does not change the fact that I'm doing my job. I am upholding justice, and if you do not respect that, I will not hesitate to report your behavior to your superiors." Maya didn't need to say more. She had not only asserted her identity but also clarified that she was someone with authority within the police force, and would not allow anyone, even a colleague, to overshadow her with racism or arrogance. She knew she had reached an important turning point. This was no longer about whether she would win or lose. It was about teaching Carter a lesson in respect and justice. Carter stood there. Part of him could not deny the truth Maya had just proclaimed. As Mark approached closer, he added, "Carter, if you continue this way, I will file a report directly regarding this behavior. This is not how a police officer should act." Mark's words made Carter falter. The arrogance in his gaze began to fade. He felt a bit dazed and somewhat helpless, but his pride still clung to him. Instead of showing remorse, he simply forced a smile and looked at Maya with a cold expression. "Fine," Carter said, his tone lacking its previous sharpness. "I won't make this any bigger than it needs to be. But remember, no one is above accountability in this job." Maya did not respond immediately. She looked at him in silence as a gentle feeling of victory rose within her heart. She knew that regardless of whether Carter maintained his arrogant facade or refused to admit his mistakes, he had been defeated mentally. Her confidence, along with her affirmations of power and justice, had stripped him of the courage to continue his wrongful actions. At that moment, although the confrontation was not entirely over, Maya knew she had done right. She didn't need to rush away or do anything more. Sometimes standing firm and refusing to back down against threats and discrimination was the true way to win. Maya stood firm, refusing to back down, her gaze locked onto Carter's without a hint of hesitation or fear. Although Carter had taken a step back upon realizing she was a senior officer, his attitude remained unchanged. He still wore an air of arrogance, as if he were just waiting for a reason to continue manipulating the situation. But this time, Maya would not let him off easily. "You think I will easily concede?" Maya began, her voice cold but sharp. "You think that because you are a police officer, you have the right to treat me this way? You have treated me like a criminal simply because of my skin color, and now you expect me to apologize or back down?" She didn't need to say much more. Every word she spoke was filled with strength and determination. Maya's probing questions struck Carter like sharp knives, forcing him to confront the reality he had tried to deny for so long. His actions were not only wrong, but also steeped in racial prejudice. Carter stiffened. Although he tried to maintain a calm demeanor, his eyes began to reveal signs of wavering. He could not deny that Maya had touched on a weakness he had always tried to hide. Yes, he harbored biases against the black community, and now, facing Maya directly, the woman he had viewed as an object he could easily control, he felt completely exposed. Feelings of failure and long-suppressed pressure finally became apparent. Deep down, Carter was not entirely sure that his behavior was justified, but he also didn't know how to escape this vicious cycle. The arrogance he displayed was merely a mask he had worn for too long. However, before Maya, who represented fairness and determination, that mask could no longer conceal the truth. For a few seconds, both stood silently, saying nothing more. The atmosphere felt heavy, and even the surrounding noises fell silent as if waiting for something to happen. Maya maintained her unwavering gaze while Carter struggled to hide his inner turmoil. He felt an invisible weight pressing down on him. Maya would not back down. She knew that at this moment, with the truth laid bare, she had to seize the opportunity to create change. Not only to highlight the racism Carter had displayed, but also to prove that justice would always triumph over malice and arrogance. "No one can treat me like this. No one can view me as a criminal simply because of my skin color," Maya continued, each word dripping with resolve. "And I will not let this go unacknowledged. I will not remain silent. You will never see me bow my head." Carter, despite trying to maintain an illusion of power, could not help but recognize that Maya's words had undermined all his confidence. He felt his self-esteem under attack, not just because he had been wrong, but because the biases ingrained within him were now exposed and unprotected. "Captain Johnson," Carter said, his voice smaller yet clear, "I apologize. I was wrong. There was no reason for me to act like that." Surprises spread across the faces of those around them. Maya remained silent for a few seconds before nodding. "Your apology is noted, but your actions still need to be addressed properly. I hope you learn from this experience." Carter nodded, got into his car, and drove away, leaving behind an atmosphere heavy with meaning. It was a moment when Maya felt that justice stemmed not only from struggle, but also from compelling others to recognize their mistakes. "All right," Carter sighed, though his voice lacked its previous strength. "Do you want to make a big deal out of this? Fine, we'll see." However, just as he finished speaking, another police car pulled up nearby. It was Mark Wilson, Maya's colleague who had witnessed everything from afar. Mark stepped out of the vehicle with an expression that revealed both dissatisfaction and concern. Mark approached Carter with a serious look in his eyes. "Carter," Mark spoke up firmly and confidently, "enough is enough. You're going too far." Maya felt relieved at Mark's arrival. Although he was not someone who often spoke up during crucial moments like this one, Mark was always the first to step forward. Carter began to waver upon realizing Mark's presence. It not only stripped him of confidence but also affirmed that Maya was not alone in this fight. Both Maya and Carter turned to look at Mark. Maya knew this was an important moment. Mark was not just a colleague. He had witnessed the entire situation and recognized that Carter's actions could not go unpunished. Carter had nowhere left to turn now. He was compelled to confront the consequences of his wrongful actions. Officer Mark Wilson moved closer without saying anything else, simply standing beside Maya as a witness to what had transpired. At that moment, Maya realized she was not alone in this battle. She felt part of what could be called the police community still stood firm in righteousness and justice. Carter might be able to stand against one person, but he could not stand against an entire community when justice spoke out loud and clear. Maya stood tall, her gaze sharp. Carter wavered but still tried to maintain a cold expression. He turned away, climbed into his car, and sped off without saying another word. Tom, the one who'd been recording, approached Maya. "I will send this footage to the higher-ups," he said firmly. Maya nodded, feeling relieved that justice would not be overlooked. Carter said nothing more, merely muttering something inaudible before starting his car and driving away, leaving behind a tense silence. Tom came closer to Maya. "This video will serve as clear evidence. I will send it to the police department and the press if necessary." Maya thanked Tom, knowing that the truth had been revealed and that she would not be alone in this struggle. For Maya, it was a victory, but also a bittersweet one. She understood that in Carter's actions lay a truth he could not face. He still held some power in his hands, but deep down, his confidence had been shaken, if not completely shattered. Mark stood beside Maya, a heavy silence enveloping them. He knew this was an important moment, not just for Maya, but for the entire community they served. Maya did not need to say anything more. Everything was clear. She was not only protecting herself, but also standing up for the oppressed and those discriminated against without a voice. However, just as Carter drove away, the situation did not end there. The video recorded by a bystander during the confrontation began to spread rapidly on social media. Every moment of the tense encounter between Carter and Maya was captured in detail, from Carter's prejudiced gaze to Maya's unwavering resolve. People could see the racism Carter exhibited, and it was an undeniable truth. The video quickly garnered attention from the community, especially among those who had experienced discrimination and injustice. Maya became a symbol for many. They saw in her the courage and determination not only to protect herself, but also to represent all those oppressed in society. She became an inspiration for those who had faced discrimination, but had never dared to stand up out of fear of being overshadowed. They realized that although they might be victims of prejudice if they remained resilient and fearless, they too could change the world. But while Maya received strong support from the community, Carter began facing significant pressure. The video spread like wildfire, prompting reactions from authorities and society alike. The very next day, articles criticizing Carter's actions emerged, highlighting his unprofessionalism and racist attitude. People were united in demanding strict disciplinary action against Carter, not only for violating procedural regulations, but also for his discriminatory behavior. Carter began to realize he could not easily escape the consequences of his actions. Under increasing pressure from public opinion and authorities, he was summoned to meet with his superiors. Meanwhile, his colleagues, who had previously witnessed Carter's behavior without daring to intervene, began questioning his ethics and professionalism. Maya, although she hadn't sought attention, couldn't help but feel somewhat surprised by the congratulations and support from people she didn't know. Calls and messages from those who had experienced racism or simply empathized with her made her more aware of the impact of this incident. However, Maya remained composed and did not allow herself to get swept up in the praise. She knew that this battle was far from over and that she needed to continue standing firm in her pursuit of justice, not just for herself, but for all those who were oppressed. While there might not yet be a clear resolution to this confrontation, what had transpired marked a significant step forward. Carter could no longer escape the truth, and the racism he had displayed could no longer be ignored. Both Maya and the community understood that this was just part of a long struggle to eradicate prejudice and injustice in society. And in that moment, as the video of their confrontation spread widely, Maya realized she was no longer just an ordinary police officer. She'd become a symbol of resilience, a relentless advocate for justice and equality. Maya drove home in silence. The next morning, she entered a meeting at the police department, her eyes shining with determination. We need change. Behaviors like Carter's not only affect the community but also erode trust in law enforcement. Her words received strong support from her colleagues, marking a significant turning point in the reform efforts. Although the distant streetlights flickered, she did not find comfort in their glow. All night, thoughts of her confrontation with Carter replayed in her mind, each moment, each word from him cutting deep into her heart. She couldn't help but wonder, is racism within the police force an unchangeable reality? No matter how steadfast she remained, could she change a system that had existed for so long? She glanced through the window and saw her reflection in the rearview mirror, her face filled with contemplation. She knew that while she had won a battle today, this fight was not just about one person. It was a battle she would have to fight every day, not only to protect herself but also to safeguard all those who were oppressed, discriminated against, and treated unjustly. Every moment of the confrontation served as a painful reminder of the power imbalances within law enforcement, but it also fueled her resolve to continue on her path. Maya understood that significant change could not happen without patience and commitment. She would not allow herself to be defeated by such moments. Instead, she would transform them into motivation to rise and continue being a role model for those who followed. Taking a deep breath, she savored the cool evening air and resolved to be a shining example, not only for her colleagues but also for those still suffering from discrimination and injustice. Maya knew that her determination and actions would be a guiding light for others, a torch illuminating the path toward justice and equality. The next day, Maya walked into an important meeting at the police department where senior leaders were discussing reform issues within the force. She wore her neatly pressed police uniform, but her eyes carried a fierce determination focused on a higher goal than what was happening in that conference room. Everyone fell silent as she entered, sensing the strength and resilience emanating from her. She was not just a female officer. She was at the forefront of a revolution within the department. When it was her turn to speak, Maya stood tall, her eyes unwavering and sharp as they cut through the air. She did not back down or yield. We are facing an undeniable reality. Our police department has serious issues with racism and injustice, she began, her voice resonating throughout the room. This is not just about incidents like what happened to me. It permeates every strategy, every decision, every patrol. It is time we acknowledge that this profession needs change, not only structurally, but also in how we perceive and treat our community. She was not the only one speaking about reform, but her words carried a special weight. Everyone in the room could feel her dedication and determination in her voice. She was not merely discussing theory, she was speaking from experience. What she had witnessed, what she had endured, and what she wanted to achieve for future generations. We cannot continue to view and act as if events like this are normal. To protect justice truly and serve our community effectively, We must change how we operate. There must be transparency. There must be respect for everyone, regardless of race, gender, or social status. Maya paused for a moment to let her words sink in with those present in the room. I'm committed to fighting tirelessly for this change. I will not allow racism or poor decision-making to continue unchecked, and I hope you will join me on this journey. A moment of silence enveloped the room. Then a soft round of applause began, growing stronger until it filled the entire space. Maya did not focus on the applause. She simply smiled gently, yet inside she felt a sense of peace. She knew that the battle was far from over, but today marked a new step forward. Maya had stood up not only for herself, but for all those who had been disrespected and forgotten. She was not alone in this fight. She would always be at the forefront, leading the way toward a more equitable police force and a fairer society. Maya's story was not just about one confrontation. It symbolized courage and resilience in the face of great challenges. She fought against racism while becoming a beacon of hope for all who believed in justice and change. Maya proved that despite facing doubt and adversity, one could rise and set an example for future generations. So, what do you think about how Maya faced these challenges? If you were in her position, how would you act? How would you protect justice when confronted with discrimination or abuse of power? Share your thoughts in the comments below and propose positive solutions you believe are most effective. If you find this story truly meaningful and inspiring, please like and share this video to spread its positive message. You can also take action by raising awareness about discrimination and injustice around you, or speaking up when you see others being treated unfairly. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss powerful content like this. Together, we can create a community that supports justice and equality. Thank you for watching, and always be part of the struggle for justice and equality.